I'm here to help women reset and rewild, to embrace and prioritize the pauses in order to reclaim their peace and power. I'm Dr. Michelle Paris, director of the Poppy Clinic and founder and CEO of the Wild Collective. As a disruptor, naturopathic doctor, wife, and mama, I've created a global movement and sacred space for women to rise together. Here, you'll break through limitations, romanticize your life, and unlock the magic of your divine feminine power. My life's work is rooted in community, lifting women into their most powerful, authentic selves, while empowering clinicians to elevate their practices with a transformational, community-driven model. I lead a thriving, passion-fueled business and naturopathic practice brimming with abundance, where I can guide women to invigorate their lives through sisterhood and elevate healthcare with a cutting-edge transformational approach. I've witnessed firsthand in my practice how this model sparks consistent health transformation, creates flourishing communities, and brings profitable success. You can have it all, a life filled with abundance, contagious joy, and untethered potential. So pull up a seat. It's time to pour into yourself and tap into your intuition and design a life that's wild, free, and uniquely yours. And I'm going to show you how. This is Wild Medicine.
Hello and welcome back to the Wild Medicine Podcast. I'm Dr. Tara here today with a solo episode for all of our entrepreneur listeners. So today I really wanted to talk about what I wish I knew about money as a new entrepreneur. And I've been an ND for 2 years now, to the date actually. And so I'm still a relatively new practitioner, but I feel like I've learned a lot about finances and money really over the last couple of years. And I really wanted to come on here and share some of that because I feel like in the world of entrepreneurship and, being a naturopathic doctor, this isn't a conversation that's being had very often. And there's so much that I've learned. There's mistakes that I've made. There's good decisions I feel I've made. And again, I just wanted to share some of those insights with you. So I hope that this is a helpful episode. Regardless of where you are at in your entrepreneurial journey, I hope that you can learn something today. And so before I really get into all of the things that I learned, I just really do need to put out this disclaimer that I am in no way a financial expert of any kind. I don't have any credentials in finance whatsoever. I'm really just here to share my own experience of starting out and, as I said, what I've learned along the way, mistakes I've made, good decisions I feel that I've made as well. So I want to start with that caveat. So going back to when I was studying to be a naturopathic doctor, I actually started a business while I was in school with a colleague, and it was a partnership business. And so because there was two of us involved, it really, I feel, forced us in some ways to be really organized with our finances because it was important, of course, that both of us could see what was going on with the business financially. And so everything was tracked, everything was extremely organized. And I learned a lot through doing that. And I'm really glad that I had that experience because it really set me up for success when I did graduate and started my own naturopathic practice and my own online business as well, which are separate businesses that I have. And so, to start, something that I think is really, really important is finding an accountant that is familiar with working with entrepreneurs. And even more specifically, if possible, working with people in our field, an accountant that has worked with naturopathic doctors or has worked with other practitioners that practice in a similar way. There's a lot of nuance to our profession, right? Whether you're a sole proprietor or whether you incorporate your business, the way that splits work, the way that, maybe you charge HST for certain parts of your practice, whether that's labs or supplements or however all of those pieces work. It's important that you work with someone who understands the nuances of the way that this business operates. And so that's a really big piece of advice that I have. My first accountant that I worked with, really did not know a lot of the nuance of our profession, and it just made communication a bit more challenging. And so recently I've switched to another accountant who does really understand. It's actually what they specialize in, is working with naturopathic doctors and practitioners in the health, area. And so I would really recommend that. Again, someone that understands the nuance of this profession, it's a big asset, right? It really reduces a lot of confusion, reduces a lot of, you know, questions. It's really helpful to have someone that understands those pieces. And so some of the other things that I learned is how important it is to be organized with your finances. It's really easy for things to become really overwhelming and really, really confusing. Again, I think I learned a lot from right off the bat having that partnership business because, again, it just really forced us to be extremely organized with our finances. And so upon graduating, I think it's really important once you're licensed, once you're ready to begin practice or open up a business, whatever it is, I think it's really important right off the bat that you have separate bank accounts for your business. And I know that not everyone does it this way, but I think that it makes things really confusing if all of the money that you're making goes right into your personal account. There's a lot of benefit to separating that, right? And so you have a separate savings account, separate credit card that is solely for business purposes. It makes tracking your expenses so much easier. And it also is really helpful to keep track of income, right? So whatever that looks like for you. If you're working at a clinic, maybe you get paid once a month or twice a month, whatever it looks like. But having separate accounts can just really help with that organization piece. Something that I always wanted to avoid is feeling like I have to scramble around tax season. And so even for myself, I'm really diligent about recording all of my expenses, recording income every month, and often even more frequently than that, so that I can really stay on top of things. And a big part of this too is that as a business owner, you can write off certain expenses. And it's so much easier to do that if you're tracking your expenses week to week or bi-weekly rather than scrambling again at tax season, thinking about, okay, what are all the things that are write-offs and what isn't, right? So staying organized in that way is really so, so important. And I think that sometimes people, when it comes to the bank account, having a separate business bank account, what I've heard is that some people don't do that because there are fees associated with having a business specific bank account. And yes, there are fees. Those fees are part of running your business. They can be claimed as expenses for running your business. And I think it's a worthy investment. It's a few bucks a month, but with the ability to be so much more organized, it's just worth it. I think it's well worth the few dollars that it costs per month in order to keep things extremely organized. Another thing that's really important is saving for your taxes. As entrepreneurs, we are responsible for paying our taxes. It's different. Maybe before becoming an ND, you had a full-time job. I did. And so taxes are taken off your paycheck. You never really see it, so you never really miss it, right? But as an entrepreneur, you have to save that money for taxes. And it is so, so important that you do that right off the bat. It's a part of being organized. It's a part, again, of not panicking around tax season. And this, again, is why having that separate account is so beneficial. If all of the money that you're making is coming right into your personal bank account, it's very easy to spend all of the money that is coming in. But all of the money that is coming in is not actually all your money, right? A big portion of that is actually the government's money. And so it's very important to save that every single month. And so what I do is I have separate accounts in my business bank account. And at the end of every month, I take what I made that month and I will move 30% of that right in to that savings account that I keep until tax season. When I find out how much I owe for taxes, then I send that off. So just in terms of being organized and, again, not scrambling around tax season, that is something that I really do recommend. Coming out of school, there's also a good chance that you have education credits. I won't pretend to understand all of the nuances involved with education credits, but from my understanding, and because I've used education credits, the way that it works, again, to my understanding, is that because you have paid for your education, so again, if you're a naturopathic doctor, you've paid quite a lot of money to become a naturopathic doctor. And so the first few years or so, depending on your income, depending on how your credits are used, you can save a bit on your taxes because you get that credit from your education, all the money that you put into your education. My understanding is that it's not a one-to-one credit when it comes to the tax that you owe, but it does really help. It helps significantly to reduce the amount that you owe for taxes. So again, please check in with your accountant. I do not know all the details and all of the nuance, but it's a big tax savings in your first few years until you use up those credits. So that is something that can absolutely be helpful, but it is still really important to not over rely on the credits that you think you might receive and to still do your due diligence of saving that portion of your income for tax season. That is something, and again, that's something that when I had that partnership business, that because it was both of us, we did right from the beginning. And, sometimes based on the credits and how all of the things that I don't really understand work, sometimes you don't end up owing everything that you saved, right? And so great, you get a little bonus at the end of the year. And I think that that's better than owing thousands of dollars that you no longer have, right? So really important to do that. And speaking of tax savings, this is something that I've just learned in the last few years. If you already know this, that's awesome. But for those that don't, because, we're not taught a lot of things about personal finance. I think it's very much, if your parents taught you, that's awesome. But these conversations really aren't being had too much. I've listened to a million business podcasts. I was always really interested in becoming an entrepreneur. The business part of it really excites me. I love being my own boss. I love so many aspects of being an entrepreneur.
This episode is brought to you by the Collective Creator Academy. If you are a clinician or a coach in the wellness space looking to bring group health programming to your list of offerings because you truly believe that community is the answer and getting people to gather around, especially like-minded individuals on the journey of transformative health, then this program is for you. I have been coaching clinicians and coaches for the last 5 years. And what I did with the CCA was compiled everything that I know around group health, medicine, scaling your business, creating intellectual property, launching, marketing, strategy, building your group program, what works and what doesn't. And I put it all in a self-paced program called the Collective Creator Academy. This program has not only helped me build the practice of my dreams, but it is also helping other regulated and allied professionals do the same for their business. So if you're ready to get serious about group health, medicine, and launching programs, then this program is for you. Go check the show notes and click the link and watch the masterclass, and I'll see you in the CCA.
And I think understanding the finances is just a piece that I didn't feel I had access to learning much about. I feel like a lot of business podcasts aren't actually talking about some of the nitty-gritty and the financial tools and advice and lessons and mistakes and learnings along the way. And so, I hope to change that in some ways. I hope that we can have more conversations about these things because I think it's important and I think that we can really learn from each other. So what I was going to say, that was a bit of a tangent, but something that I have learned within the last few years is the difference between different types of accounts, right? And so the three big ones that I wanted to mention, and again, this is just my understanding, so please check in with your own accountant and all of the responsible things. So there is something called the FHSA, which is it's a savings account, essentially. It's an investment account for first-time home buyers. And then there's also the RRSP, so that's the Registered Retirement Savings Plan, here in Canada, I should say that. And then there's the TFSA, which is a tax-free savings account. Okay, so 3 different accounts that I'm aware of that I utilize. And what's really great about the FHSA and the RRSP specifically is that they also reduce your taxable income. So what that means is that the more money you put into those accounts, the less money you will essentially it lowers your income, right? And so you are taxed on your income. And so if you're putting money into these accounts, then your taxable income is less, which means that you will likely pay less tax at the end of the year. And so for all of the accounts, there are limits. So definitely be aware of what those limits are and how much you are able to yearly put into those accounts. That information should be available in your CRA account, so you have access to that information. But again, it's a really great way to begin saving for the future, begin thinking about what those goals are financially for you. And again, reduce your taxable income, right? So they're great accounts. And again, it's just something that I've learned about quite recently and how to utilize them and the differences between all of them. And so I think as an entrepreneur, it's great to have access to those accounts. And another piece of this too is student loans, right? And so maybe you're not in a position just yet where you can start investing into these accounts, which completely makes sense. Student loans is another big conversation to be had here. I know a lot of people, the vast majority of us do graduate with significant student loans from school. And that can be really intimidated. I was very intimidated by my student loan balance. And sometimes that intimidation causes people to just sort of ignore their student loans for quite a while. And I understand that urge. I'm not here to blame or shame. I understand that urge. But, this is your friendly reminder that just because we don't look at it doesn't mean that it's going away. And so it's important to have a plan of attack when it comes to paying off those student loans. And so the way that I did it and the way that I set things up for myself for success was I put everything in an Excel spreadsheet, all of my loans, and I had loans from different sources, but I put everything in one spreadsheet. I looked at the interest rate for all of the loans that I had, and a good chunk of my loans were 0% interest loans from OSAP, from the government. And so, I'm in no hurry to get that balance down to 0. Of course, pay the minimums and do all the responsible things, but take a look at the interest rates of all of the loans that you had. I had some money on a line of credit as well that OSAP didn't cover. And so that was a big priority for me because that interest rate was significant. Right? And so looking at a plan of how you're going to begin paying those interest or paying those debts back, especially the ones that have high interest rates, I really encourage you to make that a priority, because what we don't pay off, especially the ones with high interest rates, they really just compound over time. And compounding works both ways. These are things that just in the last few years, I'm learning. I have a really good friend who loves all this, who loves all of the financial literacy pieces. I've learned a lot from her. I've also read a lot of books, a lot of good audiobooks on a lot of these topics, because I think that this is a really important part of life, right? Our finances are super important. And I think coming out of school, I just felt really in the dark about finances, about how much I owed and what I was making and having a plan of attack. And now I feel like I have a really good understanding of my financial situation. I have goals, I have plans, I know where things are going. And that feels really good to me. It feels really empowering. And it also creates a sense of peace in my body and in my life, right? And it's not about, having the most or whatever it is, but it's about understanding where your money is going and being intentional about that. Something that my husband and I do is we sit down and we talk about finances regularly. And we go through and we have a personal budget and we have our own goals that we've created together. And again, that just feels really good, right? Often on this podcast, we're talking about health. That's a big part of the podcast if you tune in regularly. And financial health is a big piece of that. It's a big piece of the puzzle. And I think the more that we understand our own financial situation, the better we feel, right? I think it's extremely empowering to have all of these pieces together and really know where you're going. And so I was saying that compounding works in both ways, right? And so the debt that we have, especially high interest debt, and so that's going to be credit card debt, that's going to be a line of credit. Those interest rates, especially, you probably don't have credit card debt from school. I don't know. Everyone's situation is a little different, but those have high interest rates, right? And so what that means is that you're going to owe a significant amount of money in a few years or few decades if you don't prioritize paying those off, right? And so on the other side of that, those accounts that I mentioned, so the FHSA, the RRSP, the TFSA, the money that you put into those accounts, you invest that money, or you can invest that money into the stock market. And, that's a whole other conversation, maybe for another podcast if people are interested about the stock market, which is something I'm really fascinated by. And again, have just learned so much about. There's still so much to learn. There always is. But it's something that I've really taken an interest in the last few years, just really starting to understand all of those nuances. And so the money that you invest into those accounts, into the stock market, or maybe it's not the stock market, maybe it's, something else for you, whatever it is, but that compounds over time as well. And so what that means is that the money that you put into those accounts, the money that you invest in the stock market now, it grows significantly over time. And that's really cool to see. There's something, if you want to get a really good idea of this, Google compounding interest calculator, and then you can play around with it. You can play around with initial investment and how much money you're contributing monthly or whatever that frequency is for you. And you can see over time how much that money will grow. And I think it's really important as entrepreneurs that we do this because we don't have a retirement, right? We don't have an employer that is doing an RRSP matching program. It's really up to us to save that money for retirement. And so just to overshare even more, what my husband and I did when we were getting really organized with all of these pieces is we set targets. And so we had a really good chat with ChatGPT about the state of finances. And of course, don't overshare any sensitive information with AI, just putting all the caveats in there. But we chose a number that felt really good for us to retire with. And then we worked that back and we said, okay, if we want to retire with this amount of money, then how much money do we need to contribute every month into the stock market, which is how we choose to invest, in order to get there? And so we came up with those numbers, and that's part of our financial plan. And it was really important to us to do it that way because, it's like the Goldilocks, right? It's like the sweet spot because there's also the concern of oversaving, which people absolutely do. And then they get to retirement and they have, $10 million, like so much money that you could never spend between the ages of 65 and the end of life, right? And that's, and I think that some people, that makes them feel really comfortable to know that they have tons of money to retire with. But, it's also important, at least to me and my husband, that we're also really enjoying our life, right? And so we wanted to figure out what that sweet spot would be for us so that we also make sure that we're going on the trips and we're spending money to, buy the food that feels really good for us and be generous and all of the things that are important, right? And so finding that sweet spot is important for you, right? And maybe you're not at that place right now, and that's okay, right? You can always come back to this, and this isn't to, I hope this isn't creating any fear or making you feel like you're behind. You're not behind, right? Any time that you start is the right time to start for you. I just want to help create sort of a big picture of all of the things that I feel are important to start thinking about as an entrepreneur, right? And figure out what feels good to you. Figure out what debt repayment strategy works for you, what savings plan works best for you. That might look totally different than everything I'm mentioning here, but just starting to envision that, starting to get curious about what a good life means for you, what that looks like, getting curious about other sources of income, right? Maybe you love your private practice, but you would love to explore some other ways to make money. Maybe that looks like, doing talks in the community. That's one thing that I do. That partnership business that I mentioned, we used to do talks in schools about mental health with students, parents, and teachers. And it was a wonderful experience. I adored that work. And so I'm still doing some of that now in a different capacity. But that's a way to explore other avenues and other opportunities to grow your income. And even doing things online, right? So Michelle and I, in other episodes, we've talked about growing on Instagram and creating offers and creating value in other ways, right? And there's so much. I always say this, and I really felt this way even when I was pursuing my naturopathic degree, that there are so many opportunities out there for us as naturopathic doctors, as entrepreneurs. And that's part of the reason why I love being an entrepreneur. It is so creative. It's so creative. We get to create this life in a way that feels really good and feels really aligned and a way that feels so and with so much passion. And so I encourage you to think about what that looks like for you. Is it private practice? Yeah, probably a big chunk of that is, right? And I love my private practice, and I also love all of the other things that I get to do. And getting to blend all of your passions is something that is really cool about this job. And I'm grateful to be here and to just love this so much. And I hope that you do too. And I hope that you feel like there's a lot of avenues for you to explore and get curious about, because all I see in this profession is potential. I see so much potential to make so much positive change. And so part of this too is I really encourage you to dream about what would feel good for you in your career, right? And it can be, your wildest dreams, right? And then thinking about how you get closer and closer to that.
Is bad math messing with your launch? I see you. If you are really excited about the group program that you have or the education program that you have online, and you know that it would really benefit so many people to have this information, but you don't know what to price it, you don't even know how to approach it, and you do not want to just do what everyone else is doing, which is looking at how everyone else is charging for their programs and just doing the same. That's really ineffective logic. It is also not ensuring that you're being paid appropriately for your efforts and hard work. Being someone who has been launching group programs for the last 8 years, I have figured out the framework and the calculation pathway to properly charge for your group program or online program. So if you head over to the show notes and click the link, it will take you over to my group health program calculator, which can help you start to figure out your monthly reoccurring revenue that you would need to make this a viable option for yourself, but also how to price it in a strategic and advantageous way for your greater community so that you can make the meaningful impact that you desire, but that it is a win-win situation. No more bad math messing with your magic. The world needs clinicians and coaches to be doing innovative, viable solutions to improve healthcare, and this can be a very effective way for you to be able to do that. So go check out my group health calculator and start plugging away and getting those numbers so that you can have a launch that is effective, scalable, really exciting, and successful. Good luck.
Yeah, I just think it's a really cool time. And I think being an entrepreneur in this age of digital media, there's so much opportunity for us to create and be extremely creative on social media and reach people all over the world, all over the world. The work that I do online and the courses I've created and the other masterclasses and ebooks have touched people, families all over the globe. And that is really incredible to see. And so I just hope to inspire you to dream a little bit bigger. Right. And maybe you love your private practice and that's all you want to do. And that's amazing too. I don't want to, there isn't a right or wrong way to do this thing, right? It's just about finding what feels really aligned for you and feeling excited about that. Right. And I think, back to all of the finances, I just think it's so important that you understand your numbers. You know all of the things. It is so important and it's so empowering to have a good understanding of that so that you know how to plan for the future, right? And again, we don't have any sort of retirement plan. And so what does that look like for you? Maybe you want to just keep working forever, right? And there will probably be an age, and I love my job and I'd love to keep working, but there is going to be likely an age where you want to maybe do this thing a little differently, or you want to take a step back, or maybe you're someone that wants to start a family. And that requires a lot of financial planning as well. And so getting curious about what all of that looks like and knowing if you're someone that has student debt, that you will still be responsible for paying back those loans as finances, maybe personal finances due to personal circumstances and life changes, really start to shift. And so that's where being really organized, having a good idea of where everything is at, is really important. And I think another piece of that, of knowing where your finances are at, it really helps you to invest in yourself, right? And so knowing what resources might be helpful for you, whether that's conferences that might be helpful, whether that's business coaching or whatever it is, right? Knowing where you feel like you're getting stuck and knowing what your finances look like and what they're projected to look like can help you make really good short-term decisions, but also long-term decisions, because this is our career, right? We're going to be in this for a very long time. And so getting a good handle on your finances is the way that you ensure you can keep doing this thing, right? Because truthfully, at the end of the day, we are running a business, right? And if you are unable to pay your bills, if you're unable to pay back your loans and save appropriately for your future, it's going to be hard to continue to do this job that you love. And so you are an entrepreneur first at the end of the day. And I just think that understanding everything that goes into that and understanding those important elements is such a crucial part of success. And having conversations about these things, right? Talking to your friends about these things that you graduated with or that are a few steps ahead of you. Start these conversations, understand what it is that they're doing if they're willing to share, because I think that there's just a lot of silence around these topics as entrepreneurs, but we can all really learn so much from each other when we're willing to share whatever it is that we're willing to share about all of these pieces. So I really hope that this was helpful, regardless of where you're at in your journey. I hope that you learned some things and got a good idea of some of the nitty-gritty behind the scenes of, what this all looks like. And I think, again, we live in this era where we have a lot of access, right? And a lot of access to planning for these things. ChatGPT is and I should say that I have caught some errors when having conversations or asking questions about some of these topics. My accountant has let me know that not everything that ChatGPT has told me is correct. So again, please fact check all of the things, make this work for your personal situation, but it's never been easier to get started and get curious about some of these topics and really set yourself up for success because of how much access we have. And so I encourage you, again, wherever you're at, to just get started. Do the next thing. Maybe it's setting up a spreadsheet. And my accountant gave me a really wonderful spreadsheet. Maybe I'll ask her actually if she would be willing to come on the podcast, because I think that would be a really beneficial episode and we could get some really good insights and advice when it comes to getting started. She gave me a spreadsheet to track everything, to track income, to track expenses, mileage, all of the pieces. And that was really helpful. And even before I started working with her, I had my own spreadsheets where I was tracking some of these pieces as well. And it's great. It's great to have good oversight into all of the things. And as I mentioned before, I operate two separate businesses. So I have my ND business, and then I have a separate business that does everything else, essentially. All the talks that I do, all of the everything online, all my courses and webinars and all of that. And there's nuances, right? And they operate in slightly different ways. And having an accountant, again, that could understand that was really beneficial. So as I said, I hope that you learned something today. I hope you feel a little bit inspired to get your finances in order. We just passed tax season, so depending on how painful that was for you, you might feel more or less motivated to get started. And I hope that you're just, I think often we're speaking to newer grads when we do these entrepreneur episodes. And I just hope that you're feeling excited and inspired by the possibilities of this profession, because it is a wonderful profession. I truly feel so grateful and so lucky for the work that we get to do and the creativity that we get to express in weekly, daily, right? So I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next time on the podcast. Stay wild.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Wild Medicine. I am so grateful to have you here, and I hope you're feeling inspired and empowered. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It helps us reach more incredible women just like you. And before you go, quick reminder, the information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat any medical condition. Please consult with your healthcare provider for personalized advice and care. And if you're ready to take inspired action and dive deeper into your own health journey, please visit us at poppyclinic.com. Let's rewild and reset your health together.